Hello and welcome to another DF developer interview. I'm John Linneman and I am here with some very special guests working on a brand new PSVR 2 game, and we're going to talk all about how they made it work on PSVR, their experiences using the hardware, and what we can expect from the game when it ships very, very soon. So, gentlemen, over at 17-Bit, why don't you introduce yourselves, the creators of Song in the Smoke, Rekindled.
I'm Jake. I'm the art director and the creative director.
I'm Colin. I'm the technical art director.
Alex, lead engineer.
I'm Ali, the sound designer.
That's awesome. So we have you guys here over in Japan right now. You've got the game running. I see that headset right there in the shot. So why don't we throw that bad boy on and get into this and start taking a look at some of the game in action?
Yeah, Ali's going to jump into kind of the first real level of the game, sort of post the opening tutorial without much, and he's going to just kind of run around and kind of show you all the stuff we've been able to do here. Which has been a lot. This started off with kind of the idea of doing, an up-res version of it, and these two yahoos in particular kind of talked me into going much deeper. But the end result speaks for itself. We're really proud of this thing, and it's really, it's just an absolute blast to play on PSVR 2. The headset is a piece of work. It's beautiful. We love it. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Before we get into some of the tech details, I probably should just lay out that this is basically a virtual reality survival game, right? And it was originally created for lower spec platforms, including PSVR 1, and I think it was on the Oculus store for use on the Quest, right?
Right.
So,
we were originally pitched. It was we were originally going to make it as a PSVR game. Like that was the base. That was the baseline machine.
Okay.
And then, like 2 years into dev, Jake came to me and he was like, "Colin, I know you've been working very hard on this PlayStation 4 game. How would you feel about putting this game on the Oculus Quest?" And this is back when it was the Oculus Quest 1, which in terms
something about killing yourself. I forget what it was exactly, or maybe killing me. It was something to do with killing somebody. Sure.
I wouldn't say it was the worst day of my life, but it was. But the PS5 but you telling me that we can do a PS5 version was like the best day of my life. So I am healing.
It was funny though watching these guys, because it was a big challenge taking that PSVR stuff and squishing it down. It was a long, challenging development pipeline. Again, these guys are mostly responsible for that. But when we flipped the switch and went the other direction, it was smiles instead of frowns for sure.
Yeah, so that's interesting then. Going down to a low spec platform like the Quest, and now you're able to go all the way back up to PSVR 2. And I think that's what we should get into. Like when you first got this hardware to develop for PSVR 2, like what were your initial impressions upon booting it up and actually playing around with it, and just what was the experience like early on?
I mean, when we first got in, it was like running at 120 before Colin went crazy. It could have run faster, I think. So normally we've got a piece of hardware and we worked, with the Quest, we worked for a month to get it looking like Torah was a first pass. But no, the screen was great. We were pumping out higher resolution, higher frame rate from the get-go. It was a really good impression.
As I said, we got to a point where we just kind of kept throwing stuff in, and Colin was just like, let's just push everything crazy until we break it, find those limits, and then kind of start pulling back. Because at first we were just kind of like inching along, putting this in. We're like, how deep can we go? I was the unofficial foliage king. I was pushing for way more leaves and grass. I mean, it's supposed to be this jungle thing, and on the Quest we had to kind of like come up with sort of a compromised look with a lot of the big foliage kind of faked and stuff, and then kind of cutting way back on the smaller stuff. And on this thing, our first test, we went crazy. We asked Andy, our level designer, to kind of just get in there and go bonkers with the foliage tool in Unreal. And then we finally kind of started hitting some breaking points when we were just like a billion polygons, and then we started to reel it back a bit, but still very impressive.
Yeah,
That's
it was
cool.
Built a bit irresponsibly.
We had to find our limits, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So how about image quality then? So this game does seem to use the eye tracking for foveated rendering, right? To like, what kind of a performance boost does it provide? What kind of impact does it have? And what actual resolution are you targeting? Like pixel resolution per eye are you targeting?
You played with the settings more than I did.
Okay, that's just true. So the way it started was we began just having it one to one, like matching the pixels in the headset.
Full native res.
Right, exactly. We started at native, and for VR you can't run it native. Like you really need to apply a couple levels of anti-aliasing before it starts to look nice and smooth. Did PS4 have foveated rendering? I believe it.
Yeah,
did.
I'm pretty sure on Quest and PS4 we had standard, non-gauge tracked foveated rendering. Yeah.
And it was kind of gnarly on the Quest, but it got frame rate up, and we really needed it. We really needed to be there to hit 72 FPS, which is the minimum you have to do on Quest.
Right.
With this, we basically started, and then we started cranking up NSA FX.
Flexible scale rasterization or something like that.
Yeah. So we did that, and we found a spot where we were pretty comfortable with it, and we kind of sat on it for about a couple of months. What happened was we didn't have the gaze tracked foveated rendering until late, maybe ship, and we were using. I was just kind of eyeballing it, and we were hitting like 90 FPS like most of the time. Like there weren't really any break cases that would make it drop. But then one day we finally got the gaze tracked foveated rendering in, and we were just like, oh my God. Like it was night and day. Like stuff where like grass, like high noise stuff would be like kind of fizzy in the background. You turn on the gaze tracking, and it just goes away. And you try it, and it tracks your eyes so quickly, and your eyes are fast. And I was I'm gonna break this thing. I'm just gonna look left. I'm gonna look right, and I'm gonna fake it out. No. It's incredibly accurate. It's incredibly fast. You can't break it.
Wow.
And basically, wherever you look, that's where the detail is, and it's completely transparent, and it is very, very difficult to go back.
Yeah, it changes the way you play, because you kind of train yourself in VR to just look straight forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then suddenly, just like without realizing it, I had to go and change all these gameplay elements, which were like triggered by looking at them, and because you just naturally start looking around with your eyes, and it just changes how you experience VR.
And I made the settings based on kind of my own personal perception. So I'm hoping, like you might say, I eyeballed it. But I'm like the thing is, we're also developing very much in a bubble. We have played no other PSVR games. Like we don't know what they look like. We don't know what other people's games look like.
And there's not much online, really.
No. There's barely anything.
So we just hope we did it right. And if not, I can patch in some new numbers. But in terms of you asked about the performance, and we noticed no impact on perf. I mean, we were already like riding right at the edge of 90 FPS, but we also have we were able to use. What's the thing where it scales down the resolution? There's too much stuff on the screen.
Dynamic res scaling?
Yeah. It's compatible with dynamic res. So if you ever get into a point where things there's just too much stuff on the screen, it'll knock itself down.
Okay.
So we're always at 90.
This seems like a huge deal then for VR going forward, since it allows you to really spend the rendering budget on what you're looking at rather than like trying to find some weird middle ground. So what about like so I haven't actually used PSVR 2 yet as of this recording, right? I do not have it. What kind of a difference did you feel the FOV made versus prior headsets? Because older headsets are like looking through like a little like tube basically.
Yeah, this is the first one where you're kind of like, oh, okay. Like this is not the first thing I'm concerned about. Also, the light leak is so tight. It's like a really light, thin, kind of cool rubber, but it's pitch black in there. Like you see no light outside. Like they did a really good job with the headset. It's really, really nice. But yeah, just the kind of relief and like this lack of claustrophobia that you feel immediately upon putting it on. You're like, okay, like I can spend some time here. This is actually really nice. The resolution is very high. It really is the premier headset right now, and I don't think that that anything else is going to beat it. Anytime soon.
Tough to, yeah.
Coupled with there's going to be kind of like all the indie stuff and kind of the smaller scale stuff, and then there will be some bigger title support from whether it's Capcom or Polyphony, whoever is doing these kind of like these add-on pieces of the VR content for AAA stuff. I mean, I think this is going to be the premier headset for some time.
So actually, then that also makes me wonder. This headset does boast HDR support. Are you doing HDR in the game?
So the issue that we had was that our game was always made for SDR.
I see.
Or LDR. Because even though you had that lovely OLED in the PSVR 1, I'm pretty sure it was not HDR.
No, pretty much no headset has supported this as far as I'm aware, outside of maybe some random high-end one, but it's very rare in VR.
Right. So we had to get a lot of help getting the colors to look right. It was actually that was really hard. Like just color brightness, and we had to change some of the cutscenes. Like I had a cutscene that like faded to white. No,
Too bright.
So I just too bright.
Wait, is the default mode then, does it just render in one way, like where it's like using the HDR capabilities of the screen, or do you actually have a choice on the dev side to say like, no, we want to do this in LDR? Or was it only output the one way?
Yeah, initially it was LDR, but you can select. We don't toggle. We don't allow the user to toggle. It's always HDR in the headset.
Right. Oh,
Right.
and another thing is when you played the game on PSVR 1 and on Quest, you would see a lot of color banding because we do a time of day cycle, and like when it gets to like night and like the sundown and like there's red banding, and it was really really bad. That's gone. Like it's we're running at a much higher color depth. I assume. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're in HDR, so yeah.
It's interesting then. So you've implemented all that stuff. Image quality is a huge boost. Is there anything else related to performance or visual quality that you really felt like was a big leap for you guys in terms of both working and what the actual what the users will see at the end?
For me, I mean, as you know, gameplay is king, and the eye tracking stuff is so subtle, but it's so powerful. Like we added in this. We should talk about the free movement mode.
I should talk about the
eye
tracking.
Alex twisted our arms and made us do it, but we're glad he did. The point is, you're using your eye to look. Like before, you would have to use your controller, point where you wanted to kind of clamber up, and then like you would jump up that way or whatever. Now you just sort of look, and it's so like you're looking with your head, but you're also looking with your eyes, and it goes right to what you're looking at, and it doesn't take long. It's not like over the top, but it doesn't take long until you're just like a gear faster. Like it's just like this weird interface between man and machine where you're, it's just like this subtle thing, but it's so direct, it's so immediate, it's so natural. It's like this weird thing, like, we're already kind of getting used to just using our necks in VR to drive the camera. Now you've got your eyeballs too, which, that much more powerful, and you're so much better at it. And it just becomes like this really interesting facet. But, it's tracked, it's a piece of data, you can be using it for all these different things. I think that we're going to see some really interesting, use cases over the years, but for us, it really helped out too.
I mean, Alex, you hooked it up in like a day.
We're about to lose a man.
Yeah. He's gonna whack him. Yeah. No, actually, thinking of that, so the input from the headset for eye tracking, that's just like another data stream that you guys can then intercept and like choose what to do with, basically.
Yeah.
What else did you do?
What the eye tracking stuff?
Yeah. Like we have the ghosts, right?
Yeah. Well, just to touch on what you're asking, you have you have multiple bits of information, but you have like your average ray that you're looking at. It also tells you what your convergence point is, so it can actually tell you what you're focused on based on both. Which is, we didn't put that to use, but I think that's going to be really interesting.
Wait, so let me get this then. So one of the issues in VR I found is like if you have like an object and you hold it up close to your face, similar to real life, I guess it's harder to focus really up close. Is it possible then to sort of adjust the virtual focus to allow it to appear clear and that kind of thing? Like, how does that work? Can you actually play with the camera focus in real time?
So that's really interesting because I am farsighted, and in VR I can look at stuff just like this and it's crystal clear. I've always noticed, why is this is so weird? Like, how can I feel like I'm 15 years old again? My old eyes can see.
I'm nearsighted, so like I see very clearly up close, but use glasses for distance vision, and I find that specifically in VR, when I hold it up close, I have a harder time seeing it clearly versus real life. And I was always wondering like if they could use the eye tracking feature to sort of like play with the game's focal distance, right? Like the convergence of the images.
Set the actually add FOV effects to things that you're not looking at.
Yeah.
You could technically train and see where the depth was.
Exactly.
Certainly on our end, we could do things like distance blur and all the rest of it. And that's kind of something you don't do in VR because
no, of course not. Yeah.
But you could do that now because you know what the player's trying to focus on. But yeah, as for trying to improve focus, that's probably one to somebody like Epic. But on the outside of our hand.
While we're looking at this footage here with this black area, so one of my complaints with the original PSVR and most other headsets is that black was not black.
It's real black. It's real dark.
So so that actually does legit look dark now. That is.
I mean, you can't tell when the screen is on. Like you put it on, it's just.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just black. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. Yes, that makes a huge difference. Okay.
So we had to go and relight every single one of the cutscenes, taking that into effect.
See, that's really interesting that because the screen has changed so much and just the way that works with the eye tracking, you really had to go back and reconsider some of the artistic decisions as well. So
it was really nice though, because this time, like before, we were targeting, PSVR, PC, Quest 1, and Quest 2.
Different, very different. And don't forget PS4 and PS4 Pro.
Right.
The professional.
Yes. So this was like this, every decision was like, well, it bubbled into like 5 decisions, where this was like a single hardware, single target, single set of rules, single set of outputs. Like everybody was just like so relieved. I mean, just internally, but also it just kind of helped us really focus on it and take advantage of the all the unique features that we were kind of like interested in playing with and proving out.
So how about the haptics side of thing? Does the game make use of that, and how do you feel that impacted the experience?
Well, Ali was the one who set up the haptics, because they're basically sound waves you feed the controller with question mark.
I think that's how it works in the DualSense controller as well.
I think so. It's a massive improvement if you come from like the PlayStation Move controllers, which are like your old school Rumble.
Oh, those are not great.
But yeah, it's the same kind of assets that you're working with on the touch and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, it really adds to the experience. But also you have the headset rumble as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because it's one of those things where like we at first we overdid it, right? We were like going through the bushes, and every time you're like too much, like let's not do that. But then little things like jumping into the water, like VR already, like as you see him swinging blindly over here, you sort of lose yourself a bit.
Absolutely.
You're getting your kid, your cat, whatever. There's always like this kind of fuzziness where the real world ends and the game starts. And so this added dimension of this like subtle but like effective functionality of like jumping into the water or like coming out of the water, and like you feel that rumble in your head, or when you've taken a hit, it's like a subtle thing, but you really feel it, and like it's just, you can overdo it. And so we had to kind of go in and kind of like, tune it down. But the fact that it's in there and it does what it needs to do really, really well, I think. And it really does add to the immersion.
This is actually something that kind of makes me excited about this hardware launch, is because it seems like a lot of developers, such as yourselves, there's a lot of new hardware features here, and you're not really talking or haven't experienced other developers' PSVR 2 games. So it feels like everybody's coming at this with their own, like, well, let's just see what we can do with this. And I think it's going to result in a lot of unusual and unique games early on that don't have any, this is the best practice for PSVR 2 established, right? You're just like figuring it out as you go. So that's,
I mean, to be fair, we started this game, very early on in sort of the overall VR life cycle, and there were no answers. Like everything, like designing the UI, designing combat.
That's right.
Alex, remember when you first started, we were doing like, we were hopping around the thing, and like we would like lock onto an animal and like snap point around it, and everybody was just barfing immediately. Like there were no standards, and we were looking at everything, and like everybody was solving similar problems, but everybody was doing it different ways, and everything had different positives and minuses. And it was just a really interesting time to be a game developer. We've been doing this for so long as game developers, and all of a sudden it's like, it's similar, but the palette has changed, the tools have changed, the templates have changed, and you sort of need to reinvent the wheel like over and over and over and over and over again. And so it was kind of, I don't want to say we're used to sitting in this kind of weird limbo, but we're kind of used to it just because of all the experience we had doing this stuff. And so it wasn't a weird space to be in again, but we are all very super excited about seeing how everybody else does stuff, and the new trends and the new standards that are going to be emerging very quickly as everybody kind of starts looking at all this stuff. This next generation of stuff will be hopefully kind of riding on the shoulders of giants and pushing this stuff to the next level. I will say with the for me personally, just after having played the game so many times, the eye tracking and being able to kind of like when you're running from an animal and like instead of like putting your hand up and scanning physically, like you're just kind of like glancing around trying to get that lock to pick up, like running and jumping and being able to pull yourself back up on stuff. It's like this. It's another element of the control input that you have that is not standard, right? It's not standardized up until now. All of a sudden you're using your eyes in a gameplay way that you've never done before. And that's the kind of stuff that really makes me think that, we're about to see a kind of a big, weird leap in gameplay with that super high fidelity, right? Like, the problem is you're so good at using your eyes. Like, there won't be, the goofy kind of aiming, like, first-person shooters and stuff on VR anymore like this, because it's just, the eyes are so powerful and they're so, they've got such amazingly, incredible fidelity. And I think you're going to, is people start bringing that into as a traditional input through different ways, you're going to see all kinds of weird stuff that's going to just, the fidelity and the relationship between the user and the game is going to be like blurred in a way that it never has before. And I can't wait to see.
I mean, I started playing, I was playing some DMZ in Warzone, and when I was trying to clamber stuff, I kept like looking directly at the edge.
That's funny.
And man, it's really hard to go back.
The thing is, though, that's really interesting is, so eye tracking is a big change, but what's also a big change really is just the controllers. And what I mean is, like, there's a lot of owners of PSVR 1 that may have never experienced proper hand tracking, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time that it has that. I mean, all Oculus has done it, the Vive, all of this stuff. But if you've only used PSVR 1, coming to this, I think, seems like it's going to be a quantum leap compared to the Move.
Yeah, the fidelity is just insanely different, and it's just not even.
I mean, I was playing PSVR. I was playing PSVR 1. I was playing our game last night in PSVR 1. Just like, wow, wow, people still liked our game.
Yeah, that's
that's like why that's like another reason why we made the upgrade free if you bought it before, because man, if you have a PSVR 2, like this is the way it's meant to be played.
So, and that's interesting. So that's really great that you guys are offering this as a free upgrade, and I would like to see others take this path eventually, even though obviously, money, right? Like it's not cheap to do these upgrades. So
no, but we're hoping for a new user base, and if you just bought it, like
exactly.
Like,
no, that's good. But the thing that's interesting here, though, is that it does seem like you couldn't. People were upset that the PSVR 2 couldn't support PSVR 1 games, but owing to all the different inputs and the way the controllers work and all the tracking, I feel like that actually would be a bad experience without changes being made to the games, right?
How many buttons are on the Move controller? And how many buttons are on the PSVR 2 controller? Like, I there's always a way to solve problems, but I wouldn't know how to solve that one.
It would be a bad match. And also, just some games even actually show the physical Move controllers in the game, right? And then
we did that. Yeah.
You have a mismatch then with what the player is actually holding versus, so there's a lot of changes there. And what about I forgot that the PSVR 2, remind me, does it support finger tracking of some sort? Or like finger awareness?
I don't know, because we don't
use it.
Like after, I think it's aware of it if your finger's lifted or not.
Similar to Oculus.
From the footage I've seen of Horizon, I believe they do that. So I'm 90% sure it's in there.
Just not needed for this game, obviously.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, we've used the haptic triggers a little bit.
Right, those are in there.
Yeah, but just for the bow. But but from experimenting with them, they're going to be a feature that people are going to be thinking about as they design their game from the ground up. But yeah, I mean, we just like give a little bit of extra tension when you're pulling your bow, and the longer range of the bow, the more force feedback you're getting, and things like that. So they're still probably the best controller to play the game with.
So I mean, that seems to be the key here, is that everything, the experience that the player has, the senses that they use, really changes it in terms of you see more, wider FOV, you can use your eyes to actually look around the scene, you have a much more accurate method for interacting with the world. All of this stuff seems like it just makes it far more immersive of an experience, and I think that's going to be an eye-opening experience for a lot of new players for sure.
And it's just like you said, it's a lot of little things that kind of come together and just blur that line more and more between, what's real and what's not. Like, you know, if I didn't say it, you might not notice the thing with the handset because you're kind of already in the world. You're already kind of blown away and like, you know, so immersed and sort of overwhelmed with just the fact that you're in this weird world. And then you start adding this stuff in, it just blurs that line better and better, and it's fantastic. I mean,
So,
it really is.
And this is something related to all VR development, actually. But I am curious to hear your thoughts on when you're working on something like this. It's a VR game. Like, how are you checking to see how things look in VR? Do you just have your headset there on the desk and you're just constantly putting it on and off all day?
Yeah. It's you just kind of wear it kind of all goofy and you just pull it down. It's like, oh, okay.
One of the greatest realizations I had in this life was using voice recording to take notes. So I wasn't, because normally with a game, if I'm testing it, I'm taking notes or I'm typing up the notes, you know, as I'm playing, I pause it and I take up the notes. This is the worst. So you just leave it on and just talk and go through later and kind of and call your notes.
That's actually
But
fantastic.
spend a lot of time looking at stuff and we were also, you know, remote. We're kind of a hybrid studio now where you guys come in a couple days a week. And so, you know, we're just kind of saying, hey, you know, pull the latest build, take a look at it. You know, what are your feedback on this, that, and the next thing? It's been a challenging development process through, you know, moving from everybody under one roof all the time working together to, you know, super distributed and working in VR and having these different, you know, dev kits. Like there's a lot of just friction, but we managed to kind of overcome it. And I mean, I think it speaks for itself. Like it's Colin's been doing these kind of little side-by-side videos that he's putting up of, you know, Quest through PlayStation VR 1 through to PlayStation VR 2, and the difference is just staggering.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to think of it at the base level. We redid the polys. We like maybe by a factor of like 4 to 10x.
Wow.
Just the individual, but like our game is like a lot of rocks, a lot of trees.
So you're just going back to those original meshes and touching them up manually, or did you have some sort of okay, it was just manual work. All right.
Yeah, we had our artist Paul go in, and he, you know, basically just started smooth things out. Unfortunately, when we did the game originally, we checked in everything, all of our textures into 4K. I was like, you know, might not need this, but just in case, like, and we were real glad because we can go back and just upres all the textures. We could redo the smoke effect. The original game's smoke effect is like is super jank. I don't know if anyone else knows how to do this, or if anyone else has done this. It's so stupid. You take a cube map and you basically project it into post-process, and you just kind of screen it, and then you clamp it off with sphere masks. So you basically just like make this kind of blobby rotating cube map that it acts like fog, and it doesn't cost anything to render it really, because it's not adding layers of transparency. For this one, we could go back and we're using actual volumetric textures that were like moving across, we're moving across the levels and stuff.
And
but yeah, and we redid all the materials. Like for the rocks, like we made, I think we had like 3 levels of like 3 detail textures, because you can get so close to this stuff. It really is important for that kind of stuff to hold up when you get super close. So again, the game is stylized, so you can kind of get away with murder. In terms of performance, like we're diffuse and a normal, and that's it. Nothing in the game is shiny. And there's not metallic. There's no metallic.
Yeah, exactly. There's no metals or anything like that would require that, right?
So I mean, we just had enormous performance over. We had performance over.
So which version of Unreal Engine did you guys end up settling on for shipping this? And did it, I assume it had to change between the older version and this, right?
Yeah, I think we launched on something like 4.24 on PlayStation 4, and so we had to upgrade to 4.27.
Okay.
We obviously had the option of going to Unreal 5, but just we were kind of terrified of how much we'd break in the process.
Yeah, that's probably not something you want to do for kind of thing. Maybe for the next game, but that's cool though. So this is basically like the last version of Unreal Engine 4, if I recall.
It's so fast. It is so fast, man. And that's it. It's done. Everyone's gonna bump over to 5, but man, like it's up with Unreal Engine 3. Like the final release of 3 was just so fast, and we moved to the next generation of hardware. It was even faster, and I was like, "This is great!" And then we had to move to 4.
That's the thing, is I kind of feel like there's a case for sticking with older versions of engines depending on your visual target, right? Because like for this sort of visual design, you know, this looks great. This offers what you need, and it's fast. So, but yeah, this is cool. Before we go though, we should probably talk a little bit more about what the game actually is. Like, pitch it a little bit, because we've been showing this footage here and talking about it, but like, I'm sure a lot of people watching are like, wait, so what is this? It's a survival game? Like let's get some
It's a
basics
survival
here.
action game. Yeah, it's a survival action game. It's not quite open world. There's like these zones that are maybe, I don't know, a square kilometer or two, maybe.
It's about like half a kilometer, maybe.
Something like that.
That's good. That's good.
But you know, it's a living world. The AI kind of spawn in random spots. They have interactions with each other. Food will kind of slowly regrow. I mean, it really is a simplified, simulated world that you can basically live in as long as you want. I mean, as long as you can keep staying fed, and you know, you have to kind of upgrade your weapons. You have to kind of keep managing your clothing and stuff. Everything degrades and falls apart in time.
Sure.
But in theory, you could just kind of live somewhere and hang out as long as you wanted to. I mean, there is kind of an overarching story. There's these kind of expanding zones that you know move through and find different boss creatures and stuff like that. But it's very much like a one humans kind of story of adventure and survival. And you know, it's infinitely replayable. I mean, it really is, especially on the harder difficulties. You know, it really is challenging. It's really interesting, even for us who've played thousands of times. Like, it still stays really interesting. One of the coolest things we did was towards the very end of the project, where any reasonable person in charge would have said no. This gentleman came over and said, "Hey, you know, we're looking at the forums and we have a great community on our Discord." And he's like, "A lot of people really want to get this free movement," because we had kind of like teleport style jump for everything. Because again, when we started this thing, like, all of us, our stomachs were jumping through our, our head,
of course,
and landing on stuff, and so we sort of got better and better at it. But you know, it was definitely bogging down the experience a bit to kind of have that more traditional, slower paced movement. And so he sort of proposed trying to open up free movement, basically with free jump and being able to kind of, you know, just run around and do stuff like as if it's a first person shooter. And so we took a chance on it, and it worked out really well, and it totally fundamentally changed the game. So I mean, it really feels much more like an action game now. It's like a first person shooter.
That's awesome.
But it's this survival game, and you like everything. There's no reticle or anything. Like when you pull the bow, like it's all physics driven.
That's cool.
Like you just feel the strength of the bow. Like you get really good at just kind of predicting where it's going to be and how long it's going to be in the air.
But now you can actually jump and shoot as you're falling down.
You
which is
can.
almost satisfying.
Which is
Nice.
so satisfying. And you can ledge jump, so you can like jump, and as long as you can get your eyes onto that ledge before you fall down, you can grab it, pull yourself up. So it adds this whole dimension of gameplay. And we have a reputation at the studio for making games too hard, because we're playing them all the time, and they're meant to be replayed all the time. And so the more we play, the better we get, and like the more challenge we want.
Yeah.
It's like
An age-old
like a heroin
problem.
addiction. So we added this Jake mode because I kept bitching about wanting more and more of a challenge, and so we sort of, it was pretty hidden in the earlier releases. We sort of moved that a bit more front and center. But that coupled with the free movement, we also like, again, we were so nervous about like how people were going to deal with this kind of intensity of action in a VR environment. So we had it where you couldn't fall off ledges, and like you know you could safely kind of jump between little tiny thin paths
Nice,
inside the mountain.
nice.
Like that.
Turok style, but that's still
I
it.
love Turok.
Like if you want to teleport, jump, go for it. Just
Yeah,
turn
of
it
course.
on.
We didn't take anything out. We're just adding new options. But the new, so playing in the super hard mode with the real like immediate, you know, death if you fall off a cliff or whatever like that, it adds a whole new dimension of just like you need to be on target, you need to be engaged, but it's thrilling and it's really exciting. And for me, it's by far the best way to play the game. Like I was kind of waiting for everything to be pretty much online where I could play through the whole game again. From start to finish on the hardest difficulty, and kind of we did, you know, Alex and I did some last minute sort of tuning and balancing and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I was just like blown away at how different of an experience it was. Like even though I played it thousands of times, it was like so much more engaging, and I was just, you know, scared and like really kind of scrambling to get by. One of the interesting things about the game was it was in development for a long time. It's a complex game. There's a lot of interlocking systems and things like that. And so we designed kind of all these different survival mechanisms and systems. But it turned out when you had them all on for newer players, it was just too much. There was just too much stuff going on.
Sure.
And so we had to kind of go in and like dampen everything down, but then they kind of quit having as much meaning and impact. So going back to the super hard mode, we just turned everything back up. But now you need to use everything. You need to utilize all these different tools at your disposal to kind of survive and to stay alive in this world, because it is very intense.
And that's something I liked about 17-bit games in the past as well, is like, you know, Skulls of the Shogun and all that, where it's like sort of streamlining a more complex sort of genre into something that is more pick up and play, but still has depth in it if you know where to look, essentially. And you kind of have to use what you have, right? Because, like, I had to cover Ark Survival Evolved not long ago when it got reported to Switch. And if you've never played Ark, you load that up, you're just overwhelmed with like a billion options. Like this, it's insane. Like your brain doesn't even know what to do with it. And the people that love Ark, they like that, but there's so much to it. I don't think it's very like beginner friendly. It's not the kind of thing you can just hop into. You really got to be dedicated. And this, but I like the idea of survival. So streamlining it like this is a lot more appealing to me.
You know, just at a systems level, I really believe in robust, responsive, you know, kind of a lot of player agency, but simple enough systems that you can kind of, you know, wrap your head around them pretty quickly and sort of just get better at these systems that are inherent. And I really think, you know, I grew up playing arcade games, Famicom games like that. There are many different aesthetics. Some people love like hyper detailed stuff. I'm just like averse to that. I don't want you to stop and make me read a book to, you know, get to the next thing. I don't give a shit. That's out of my face. Let me play. And this thing is all about that. I mean, it really, you know, there's so many different ways you could go about playing the game. The way, you know, we wanted to make sure you could camp wherever you wanted. You could set up camp. You can kind of live your lifestyle any way you want. So it is very robust. And again, that is the 17-bit ethos. This is like, how can we make something that we're making these games for us. Sure. We have to play them every day for years. It better be interesting every time I play. I want it to be different and like engaging and keeping me and challenging me every single time I play. And that's just kind of built into the way that we do things here. It's a lot of iteration and a lot of trying things and a lot of, you know, spending time on just making sure stuff gets done right. But this is very much in that same vein of, you know, get in there and just play around and learn and play and have a good time. Like it's not about,
that's awesome,
you know, the specific way you do it. Like it is very open to interpretation and kind of the way that you do it. So again, getting back to what the game's all about, I mean, it really is just staying alive. You know, when we first started playing with VR, I was just fascinated by the idea that you're so in the game. You know, you're not playing a game like in the game, like Tron style. And I was like, you could build a simple little world that, like, even if you were like stuck in some sort of weird matrix glitch, like you could still survive. Like there's enough berries and food and there's enough resources on hand that you could physically survive with physical weapons in this physically simulated world. And that's really kind of where the beginning of this game came from. The whole idea was that it was a simulated world and you could just go out and, you know, do your thing. It really is all about.
That's awesome. So before we go, I do want to talk one more time about that Quest version that you did, like going from the extremes of that super limited SoC versus what you can do on PS5. Like, I'm curious about some of the other, that breath of fresh air when you're able to move onto this platform.
With the PS5, you don't really think about you don't think about polygon count. You don't really think about draw calls because you're instancing, which Unreal is really, really good at. We have a lot of rocks. Unreal basically drawing those rocks once, and then it instances them everywhere. So it's not really a big concern.
Right.
So as long, you know, we built our game correctly. It was no problem on the PS4, and then we probably had like, how many draw calls? Like 6,000, like maybe like 10,000 some frames, like on PS4.
Yeah, I mean probably less than that, but yeah, definitely in the thousands.
Yeah, and then we had to take it to this thing that they were like, you should do maybe 150, and I was like, but how? No, that was rough.
We had to, you know, merge every level, so all of, you know, everything you're seeing here, each rock is an individual draw call that the artists can just go around and scale and reuse and create interesting environments. But this all had to be like, you know, we had to get a custom engine modification, and every time we, you know, finished with a level, we had to go and merge it into one draw call. And we had to use like custom instancing, like the inbuilt Unreal instancing was not working on Quest. I think we eventually got it working and it was slower. We had to, like, you know, when you're looking at the you know, the bits of furniture that you're building, they're made up of pieces of wood that you have to put together. We had to make custom systems so they were all an instance mesh, rather than individual ones in the world. So that was just really painful piece by piece.
And what's the system? HLOD, right? They use that in Fortnite to mush things together. The custom tools that we had made were very much based on that. So we would basically have to take the entire level and then manually set clusters. So be like, okay, this
Right.
zone kind of have to be this big, and so it would moosh all the meshes into that, and would moosh all the meshes into another chunk, and then we would, we got it down to the point where it was like 150 draw calls max.
Wow.
The Quest 2 is considerably more powerful, but we wanted to make sure that Quest 1 people.
I think we were one of the last games that went out the door with compatibility for both.
Yes.
So that was a challenge.
Man, that's the thing is, the Quest is cool, but I always felt like in some ways it was placing pretty harsh limits on what creators could make. It had an overall impact in the VR space. You see it because like after the Quest really took off, PC VR kind of like fell down in terms of like, well, you got some Quest ports and you got this, but like high-end VR experiences just kind of went away, and that sucks.
I love high-end VR so much. Like
Yeah.
I love PSVR because I love when Sony throws money at like what's it, Blood and Truth was.
Oh yeah,
That's
Blood and
great.
Truth was pretty good. That's right. Yeah.
That's great. That stuff's great. I love when they'll take flat games and port them. Hitman is incredible in PSVR. But yeah, I love big budget VR. I want more of it, but
I know. Yeah. It's tough.
Stuff and like just visually, there's so many because of the limitations. You see so many of these kind of flat, garage shaded games, just like these very minimal kind of art style. Like we also, couldn't go super realistic, but it was kind of a stylish choice, and it worked for us. But we were trying to do some different stuff with the shaders and different things going on that you don't see a lot of, and you do see a lot of stuff that looks really samey on that Quest level of stuff. So I do think that with this next generation of power, you'll hopefully see a lot more kind of conversions and stuff like that, where they've got modes of VR stuff in some of these bigger AAA titles. Because with the Foveated rendering stuff, like even though you're rendering it twice, you are rendering a lot less pixels.
Right.
basically.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like where you're looking. So hopefully the power offset will be enough that you'll see more stuff that just has a natural path to get a VR version.
And you see a lot of games that are shipping on PS5 that still ship on PS4.
Yeah.
And because of it, people have to think a lot about scalability.
True.
And with that scalability, it's going to be considerably easier to get your your game rolled back to like maybe PS4 spec up and running in PSVR at like 90 FPS.
Exactly.
Higher.
And that's the thing, because if you're targeting the Quest, you're way under PS4 spec already, right? So this just opens the door for so much more. Because, PSVR 1 itself being limited by the PS4, things had to be scaled down a lot. And now it seems like we can get above PS4 spec easily now running in VR, and it's going to look pretty darn amazing, I think. So that's having a closed platform targeting that's with this certain level of hardware, I think is going to provide a great experience, and I can't wait to try it myself, hopefully soon enough. But yeah, this stuff looks awesome, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with me about it and share your experiences working on this thing. And yeah, everybody check it out. And where can they get this game when it hits? Obviously the PlayStation Store, but
I think worldwide-ish disc distribution will be on the PlayStation Store. I guess those are the two big ones.
I mean, if you really want to sell our game, we can mention that like people actually do really like our game.
They do.
Oh yeah,
and
that's good.
We were actually two of the biggest VR publications, Upload VR and Road to VR, both gave us PSVR Game of the Year that year that we launched.
Amazing.
So, and this is like, we're very proud of that game, and we worked really hard on it. But this is like so much better and so much more fun to play, and kind of more worked out. Everything is better. So yeah, we recommend this game very highly.
I'm very excited to finally play it because, by the time I hit PSVR, I was kind of like not really into PSVR 1 spec anymore. It was too lo-fi, and I don't have a Quest, so I missed it. So this is going to be fresh for me, and that's
I gotta
exciting.
say,
it's for the best.
I played everything on PSVR. I played the heck out of it. It's such a bear to hook up with all those cables and stuff. If you ever unhook it and put it back together, you're just like, oh god. So this thing just being USB-C, it's so much easier. It's so much nicer. Like I really do see this being kind of my premier way to consume a lot of content on the couch. Like I'm so excited about this thing launching myself.
Heck yeah. All right, well, everybody, keep an eye out for that coming soon. And again, thank you to you fine folks for joining me today, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.